So I began to say, if not even the best companies can provide job security for people, what does create job security? And I came up with an answer which was...
So you started as a journalist working back when journalists used to get paid. You could be a job and it wasn't just a super hard thing to do. And then when did you transition from just being a journalist to having this personal brand? How did that develop?
A couple things happened. So first off, I wrote this book and it was a national bestseller. And then the moment it came out, well, even before it came out, people began calling me saying, hey, we want you to come speak at our conference and tell us what the best companies have in common on strategy or employee engagement. So I went on to the speaking circuit. This is more than 30 years ago. And then I ended up connecting with Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Powerful, powerful book. And I represented Stephen for 6 years, teaching the 7 Habits. Then I brought out my second book, which was called The Learning Paradox. And when I published the first book, after it came out in 1990, IBM laid off 200,000 people worldwide, half its workforce. So I began to say, if not even the best companies can provide job security for people, what does create job security? And I came up with an answer which was learning, changing, and accepting uncertainty. And what we tend to fear most as adults is learning, changing, and uncertainty. And so I called that book The Learning Paradox. You can just see it right here with a baby on the cover, because our very job security is based on the things that many people fear the most. And then I've written a number of other books, but Blindsided came out, which looks at disruptive innovation. And so, for instance, right now, Tesla is worth more than 17 traditional car companies combined. That's head spinning. Or Uber is worth more than every taxi cab company in North America added together. And so while the taxi industry owns billions of dollars of assets in the form of cars and limousines, Uber doesn't own a single vehicle. And to me, that shows a widely distributed app is a huge multiplier on valuation. It also shows me the collapse of traditional business models where, you look at the asset base. Well, the assets aren't physical cars anymore. The assets are innovation and technology with a multiplier effect of having a widely distributed app. So the rules of the game are totally different. And there is so much disruption that is happening in every single industry conceivable. So I got into this whole field of writing, thinking, speaking, consulting on disruption. And then because of that, I've been going to CES and Comdex before it for the last 30 years because technology is a huge enabler of this disruption. It disrupts business models. So I've been going to CES, in Vegas it's an annual pilgrimage. I also go to Davos for WEF, and I go to MWC in Barcelona, which is the preeminent mobile conference. So everything I do focuses on disruption. Now, I want to give one example here, just right up front in the show, how it's not all about tech. So we need to deconstruct jobs. So the pandemic has thrown a monkey wrench into so many industries, so many business models. It has accelerated digital transformation by a decade. So I argue, for instance, in e-commerce, we saw 10 years of growth in e-commerce, online shopping, in the first 90 days of the pandemic. That blows me away. So these trends were here pre-pandemic, but they got turbocharged by COVID. So coming back to deconstructing jobs, healthcare workers have been burned out, and some have long COVID, and, they had to work double, triple shifts, and there's a shortage of nurses and doctors, and So one medical group, Providence Health, couldn't get enough nurses. So they went and they looked at what is the actual work that these nurses do. And 30 to 40% of their job is keying into keyboards or charting or sticking thermometers in patients' mouths. We won't talk about where they otherwise stick thermometers, Joel. We'll leave that to the listener's imagination. But you don't need a professional nurse who's had years of school or a doctor to chart or to keyboard or to stick thermometers in people. So they deconstructed the jobs. They reassigned the 30 to 40% that a nurse didn't have to do to another person who doesn't have to be as highly trained or as qualified. And their surprise, surprise, their nursing shortage went away. So it's not just about the technology. We have to think about how technology enables new relationships, new business models, and we have to deconstruct the way our organizations work, the way jobs work, and reconstruct them given the new reality. So I know your listeners are CTOs, which is all about the technology. But we need the human aspect as well. And that's the difficult part. That's where the rubber hits the road. So another great example for me is pre-pandemic, the average American worker spent 5 work weeks a year in traffic jams or on crowded transit getting to or from work. Where is the joy of that? Like if you're in a Lamborghini, you might think this is joyous, but if you're going 1 mile an hour in a traffic jam, it's either my knee or the clutch that's getting burned out in the Lambo, right? So there's no joy in commuting, no joy. And we found that the pandemic accelerated, it blew up this model that we have to be physically in work to be productive. So how are organizations reconstituting themselves with hybrid work and work from home? And how do we be productive? How do we achieve increased productivity? I have, as a client, one insurance company, and I know this is, Joel, the longest answer in the world to
If it's good. If it wasn't, I'd stop you. Keep going. Is it the gecko? Can you say? You probably can't say.
But so this one insurance company and the sales rep, they believed in the magical properties of ink. You see, ink is magical. It's got like Harry Potter properties. Only ink can bind a new insurance policy. So like this, the poor sales reps for this organization had to drive 2.5 hours west of my city to go meet a prospect for 45 minutes, hopefully sign a deal, and then 3.5 hours back in rush hour traffic, a whole day to meet one client. And then the pandemic hit and nobody could meet anybody. And so 30 years of legal and compliance saying only ink can bind a policy had to evaporate overnight, and they moved to DocuSign. Now, was it really a legal and regulatory problem, or was it a mindset problem, or was it legal and regulatory, exerting political power in their organization? Was it really a requirement to have ink? No. And so the pandemic forced these culture changes, these people and process changes. But that sales rep can now make 8 pitches a day, not 1 pitch a day. So his sales have actually increased. So there are huge benefits when we're forced against our will to cross the chasm and get to the other side and find out how technology can profoundly benefit lines of business and our companies and increase sales and increase customer satisfaction, increase employee engagement, increase employee satisfaction. So I believe we have to, yes, I am a total tech fan, but we have to look at how do we get involved in digital transformation from a people perspective? How do we bring the whole organization along?